Hey.
Hello.
Hello, Congressman.
Hello.
Hey, I'm very, very sorry for being late. I was on a call about Brayton Point, actually, about offshore wind in the southeastern part of the district, and it's time sensitive. I'm very sorry.
No worries, no worries. We're very glad to hear you. I know that you've got floor tonight, I guess, so I want to make sure that we get through this next half hour. So we'll go ahead and get started. I want to thank everybody for joining us. My name is Dylan Hosier. I serve as the CEO at ICAN, the Israeli American Civic Action Network, an organization dedicated to empowering Israeli immigrants living in the United States through civic education and advocacy. Today, we're pleased to welcome Congressman Jake Auchincloss from the 4th Congressional District of Massachusetts. Congressman Auchincloss served as a city councilor in Newton, led as a product manager in various startups, and served as a United States Marine. And Congressman, we're very happy to have you with us this evening. First, what I'd like to do is to introduce ICAN's chairman, Robert Meyer, who will talk a little, just to give you a few minutes to talk about some of the issues that are impacting our community. And then just 2 minutes after him, Adi will give a quick update on some bills that we're following, and then Congressman, the floor will be yours. Thank you so much. Robert, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for joining us, Congressman. It's an honor. So let me just quickly introduce myself. I'm Robert Meyer. I'm Israeli American. I've been here since '94. We moved to the US. I'm a high-tech CEO. So basically, you know, it's been kind of been on the road between Israel and America, and constantly been.
Okay. They're doing.
Very good, Robert.
Yeah, being always concerned about the Israeli-American relationships and other things like that. So if we look at what we are concerned about, I mean, we are very active here in the community. We'd like to see our community, the Israeli-American community, prosper. If we look at at the big picture, the things that we are really concerned about, one is obviously on the political level is the U.S.-Israel relationships. It's always been very good. It's always very strong. But lately, in the past few years, we've been hearing calls from Congress for BDS, for reducing funding of aid to Israel, and other issues like that. And you know, that basically raises our concern, and we would like to work with you on these issues as well. The second topic that is high on our mind is anti-Semitism, the rise of anti-Semitism in America. And we see that happening from all sides, right? I mean, it's basically become a problem that encompasses our society in general, doesn't just follow one, the neo-Nazi stereotype. It goes everywhere. We see it a lot on campus. The so-called intellectual anti-Semitism that is rising there. I can tell you, I've recently analyzed the FBI report on hate crime that came out at the end of 2020, summarizing 2019, and people don't realize that basically Jews are the #1 targets of hate crimes in the US. The probability of a Jew based on population is 3 times higher than any other minority that they would be targeted for hate crime. There is something that we're working quite strongly on, is getting support and recognition of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. We think that can actually help a lot. I know that the executive branch has adopted it at the level of the Department of Education, and we'd like to see that basically expanded across the government, and basically go into more of a federal recognition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Robert. That's fantastic. Adi, do you want to spend a few minutes talking about some legislation you're looking at, Congressman?
Absolutely. Hello, my name's Adi. I'm the Youth Leadership Chair of ICAN Boston. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us today, Congressman. I'm a student at Barnard College right now, studying political science, and I'm really excited to have you here. I just wanted to talk about two pieces of legislation that we would hope you would support. The first one is called the U.S.-Israel PTSD Collaborative Research Bill, and it's HR 852. It was just reintroduced in the current Congress, and basically the idea of this bill is that it establishes a grant program for collaborative efforts between the US and Israel to advance research on PTSD disorders. And the idea is that any institution that deals with PTSD and partners with an Israeli institution will then be eligible to get money from the US Defense Department. Obviously, PTSD is a big problem both in the US and Israel. Among veterans and non-veterans alike. Just to give you some statistics that highlight that problem, it is thought that 70% of Americans have experienced at least one traumatic event in their lifetime, and approximately 20% of those people have struggled and continue to struggle with PTSD. And the Department of Veterans Affairs report that between 11 and 20% of veterans who served in Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom have post-traumatic stress disorder in a given year. And obviously the list of statistics I could give you on this subject goes on, but I think you understand that this is a really problematic issue, and any research and any collaboration that we could give to fight it is obviously beneficial. So we would ask you to co-sponsor it if you could, and as it's already been introduced. The second bill that we would be hoping you could support, we would actually ask you to introduce. It's called the Israeli American Heritage Resolution. This resolution affirms that the Israeli American community has contributed immensely to the society and culture of the US. And to give you an idea of how that plays out in Massachusetts specifically, a new study published by the New England Israel Business Council found that Israeli-founded businesses are generating billions of dollars of revenue, thousands of jobs in Boston and in Massachusetts, representing about 4% of the entire Commonwealth's GDP. And they've also made invaluable contributions to various fields: astrophysics, mathematics, chemistry, engineering, the list goes on. And in addition to affirming that America recognizes this contribution, it also condemns all forms of discrimination that aims to marginalize or disenfranchise members of the Israeli American community. So we would love to work with you on this as a primary sponsor to introduce the resolution, because it hasn't yet been reintroduced in the House. And we would work with you on language if you'd be willing to support it. Thank you so much for your time.
So thank you, Robert and Adi, and thank you both for being great leaders in Massachusetts. Congressman, we'll get right to you. The floor is yours.
I appreciate it. It's good to be here with friends. I'm seeing a lot of friendly faces: Irv, Rachel, Vital, and I want you all to know that I am going to be an absolutely strong and persistent advocate for the U.S.-Israel relationship. I have a deep respect and understanding for the district that I represent and the legacy that it has in the U.S.-Israel relationship, not just because I represent a big contingent of Jewish Americans and Israeli Americans, but also because this is a district whose representatives have always led on issues of national values, and standing up against anti-Semitism and standing up for the U.S.-Israel relationship cuts to the very core of our national values. When it comes to the U.S.-Israel relationship, there are some some very key pointed political issues right now about fighting hard against BDS, which is trying to relitigate the very legitimacy of the state of Israel, and that we're not going to accept. I will fight for anybody's right to say anything that they want, including criticism of Israel, but we are not going to undermine or try to ostracize the state of Israel on the world stage. And we also, of course, have the upcoming, or not upcoming, but current state negotiations on how to deal with Iran and what the current deal and what a future deal should look like with Iran. I want to deal with Iran. I think most people want some kind of a deal with Iran. I think it makes the Middle East more secure. I think it makes US and Israel more secure. But we want a stronger and longer version of the previous bill, previous deal that reflects the new dynamics of the Middle East and that guarantees the security of Israel. We also need to push back against increasing calls for conditioning aid to Israel. And I hear people hand wave all around this about how it's going to be, well, it's not conditionality, it's accountability for the aid. And nobody can explain how that's different. We are not going to condition aid to Israel. Israel uses the $3.8 billion to defend itself, to keep American troops out of that area, and to be a strong partner for US strategic interests and for our core values. And that aid needs to continue. But then there's the broader issue of encouraging the socioeconomic ties between our two countries. And here, again, my district, I feel like is maybe the exemplar above all in the United States. I worked in cybersecurity for 2 years. And as I know Rachel has heard me say before, in cybersecurity, you're basically just trying to copy the Israelis as fast as you can here in America. And that's just one sector and one example of what commerce and exchange, both cultural and economic, can do for our two societies. Massachusetts governors, Massachusetts members of Congress, Massachusetts senators should be at the very forefront of closer ties between the two countries. And I absolutely will be a part of that. I want to speak a little bit to anti-Semitism as well, because I know how important this issue is to your group, to my constituents in the Fourth broadly, and of course to me. The first is to say I strongly support the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism and would like to see that manifested across government and internationally. And then the second is, less of an acute issue, but more broadly, we as Jews, and I would say the Israeli American community as well, should also be at the forefront pushing back against conspiracy theorizing and what we're seeing in America right now with people divorcing themselves from reality and rejecting a shared set of facts. Because Jews know from millennia of history that conspiracy theories might start in a different realm, but they usually wind their way through anti-Semitism at some point or another. It wasn't a slip of the tongue that Marjorie Taylor Greene was talking about Jewish space lasers. At some point or another, these wacky theories end up having a pointed anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist tinge to them. And if we're not stepping up and standing up for truth and accountability on all issues, I think we're not truly going to be defending Jews the world over in the long run. So it's an issue that I think a lot about, both as a member of Congress, but as a Jew as well. And then finally, Adi, I did look at these policies before the call as they were in the briefing materials. I think they are very sound policy. I'll talk about them with my chief of staff and legislative director, and I'll put my legislative director's email in here, and we're happy to work with you on it.
Great, thank you. So I see one question. Sorry, go ahead. Adi, did you want to comment or?
Oh, I just said thank you.
Excellent. So there is one question I see in the chat from Angela. It says, what will you do about anti-Semitism within our children's school curriculum? I know that and we understand at the federal government, that's a little difficult, but there is concern throughout our community across the country about certain curriculum and how they impact our community. Is there anything that can be done at the federal level with regard to that, or do we need to continue engaging our state officials?
We certainly need to continue engaging state officials. I don't want to say there's nothing to be done at the federal level, because the federal government does provide a fair bit of funding, and where there's funding, there's leverage. I'll give a sort of my broad point of view on Israel and the Middle East in our curriculum, which is that too much of the curriculum that I see tries to start way too late in the full history of that region and of the complexities of that region. It dives in around 1942 or 1967, and it's like a lot of stuff was happening before then. The K through 12 pedagogy should focus on giving context and objective history about that region, so that people come to college and come to their later years with the facts that they can then use to develop their own point of view and to delve into more recent history, where it is much more colored by subjective interpretation. But there's 5,000 years to work with that are relatively uncontested, that provide a really important backdrop for just understanding what's going on in that region.
Absolutely. All right, thank you, Congressman. Are there any other quick questions as we come to the bottom of the hour?
And I can go a little bit over. Again, I'm sorry for being late. I have a 5:30, but it's internal, so I can push it a little bit.
Okay, Robert?
I have a little question. It's more executive branch oriented, but it's relevant to our discussion here. And the fact it has to do with U.S.-Israel relationships. First, we don't have an ambassador to Israel yet. Do you have any idea about any progress around that, or can we nudge the White House somehow to get it done?
No, and the president didn't call the prime minister until later on the call sheet than most administrations have, which I noticed, which I did not appreciate.
That was my second question, but yeah. Symbolism
matters. And I get it. Canada's always first. Fine. But Israel should be right up there too. I don't have any insight. I would not claim to be in the president's inner circle on this kind of stuff. I don't know. I hope it's somebody with a strong track record on supporting unconditional aid that recognizes Jerusalem as the capital. I hope it's somebody who we have confidence represents really the core convictions of the U.S.-Israel relationship.
Avi, go ahead.
Yeah, Dylan. Hi, Jack. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Avi.
Pleasure. A question about the Iran deal, which is kind of a brewing now on the background. So, I was encouraged to. We all were encouraged to understand that the Biden administration not gonna content with just kind of reestablishing the accord, and would have some additional request or demands from the Iranians to actually get into an agreement in terms of spreading terrorism and their ballistic missile program. So I wonder what's your take on it, and whether you have any insight as how is it shaping up?
I wouldn't claim to have inner circle insight into how it's shaping up. I think that we need a stronger and longer version of this deal that is not just about the nuclear program, but that's also about their funding of proxy militias in adjacent territories, that is about their ballistic missile program. We want, in some ways, and I know this is slightly contrarian maybe to the core line of thought these days, in some ways the nuclear program that they have is not the immediate, clear, and present danger that funding of proxy militias or even their ballistic missile program is. There are very reliable ways, without a deal, that the United States and Israel can and are preventing them from getting nuclear programs, from getting nuclear weapons. It's going to be very hard for Iran to get a nuclear weapon. I think harder than maybe the median observer of that relationship realizes. Whereas the funding of proxy militias and the ballistic missile program are right now killing Israelis, or could.
Thanks.
Great. So I see, Debbie, you've asked again about the ethnic studies curriculum that is driven by supporters of BDS and portrays Jews as white supremacists. I think one thing that we try to, Congressman, highlight for at least the Israeli community is that for those who aren't aware and who have prejudice against others, if you look at it, the Israeli identity in the United States, it's very difficult because as Jews, we experience anti-Semitism. As immigrants, we sometimes experience anti-immigrant bias. As Jews of color, we may experience color-based prejudice. And then of course, being from Israel, we experience national origin discrimination. So there's really a cross-cutting several layers of discrimination that our community tends to face. And unfortunately, we're seeing that seep into our curriculum. So I just wanted to kind of give voice to that. And Debbie, I know that you might have just jumped in. The congressman said that we really need to continue working with our state level officials, and we're actually working with local Boston Public Schools as well to get more information on that. But Congressman, I just wanted to kind of give color to that kind of cross-cutting form of discrimination that this community typically faces.
Yeah, and we need to be cautious with the ethnic studies curriculum and this pedagogy sweeping the nation, or parts of the nation, that we recognize that the core premise of the American promise is that the circumstances of your birth should not determine the condition of your life. And when we treat people solely or primarily based on their membership in a group, and we evaluate them as solely through the lens of their group membership, I think we look at the wrong unit of observation. Every individual has dignity and deserves to be treated on their own merits, regardless of color or content of character or origin. And I worry that the ethnic studies curriculum veers us away from that premise.
Absolutely. Annie, if you are here, if you want to unmute and ask the congressman your question directly, since you're a student at Babson. There you go.
Yeah. Hi, Congressman. My name is Annie Wilkin. I'm a sophomore here at Babson College, and I'm also the president of Students Supporting Israel. So I've been working to pass the IRA definition of anti-Semitism on campus, but have been struggling a bit because I brought it to the student government's attention and they don't think that it's necessary. They said that doing so is kind of favoring the Jewish community over other oppressed communities, and they don't really see a need to pass this definition. So I was just wondering if you have any advice on how to go about passing it and showing the importance of passing something like this.
I mean, they're wrong. I was never in student government myself, so I'm not an alum of Babson, so I can't give you specific political advice. What I will tell you from my own political organizing experience, though, is don't fight these battles on social media. Don't fight them on Twitter or Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or whatever ones I probably don't know about yet. Door to door. I mean, the in-person organizing is how you change minds. And you find that most people are much more reasonable than the very biased selection set that voices outrage on social media.
Advice.
Yes, thank you for that. I have had quite a few meetings, and especially with senators within student government that are Jewish even, and they even don't see a need for it. So I have been focusing on doing in-person meetings or Zoom meetings at least. But yes, they haven't changed their mind at all.
Have you heard of the organization called Zioness?
I have not.
I just put the website in there. It's called Zioness. It helps with students organizing on campuses, especially in progressive cultures.
Great.
Great, thank you.
They're a great organization. Rabbi Hausman, did you have a question? I saw you on mute. No. Okay. So we're at the 2:30 mark. Maybe I'll take one more question. Otherwise, Robert, do you want to lead us out and we'll say?
Could I just jump in with one last question / request? I'm also in an affiliated organization with Annie. I'm the vice president of Students Supporting Israel at Columbia University. And we would be really interested if you had any time to spare to come and speak to my club, because we just love hearing from representatives in Congress who are supporting our cause. So obviously we can deliberate more on that in the future, but I just wanted to throw that out there. We would love to have you and learn from your experiences like the ones that you just shared in regards to mobilization. So thank you. We can talk about that in the future. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Congressman, for your time. You should know that there's everybody on this meeting, and there's a few thousand more behind us that are huge supporters of yours. We rallied strongly to get you, in the tough primaries. We worked hard to get you elected, and we're happy that you did. So good luck in Congress, and thank you for taking time to hear us out.
Well, hopefully sooner rather than later, we can meet. We can do an in-person event at Cafe Landwehr.
Oh, every Saturday I'm there, so.
I'm there too. It's my wife's new favorite spot. I've been taking her there, and actually my son too. He loves it. He loves the croissants. So.
Yeah.
Great.
That's excellent.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you all for hosting me. Be well.
Thank you.
Thank
you very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys, everyone.